Now, jumping into the MLB, Brett, and last episode we did not have a lot of games on going into a Monday. There were just 3. We are back to your regular scheduled programming of baseball in the summertime, and that means that we have, 14 games, the standard issue, 10 plus games, plenty to pick from, a few good lines. I think we found a few good lines.
Yeah, thank God we don't have the 3-game Monday night again. I don't know what happened there,
That was
MLB, but don't
weird.
do that.
It was weird. It was weird. It was weird. We need those games to pick from. Come on, MLB. You should know this.
Exactly, but Higgins, I'm going to take us to Pirates Nationals. The Pirates have made quite a few headlines this season with some jarring plays in the field this season by that team. So there's definitely concern. Can Brian Hayes miss first base on a home run last week? So it's been a nightmare season for the Pittsburgh Pirates. It has not gone so great for the Washington Nationals either, Higgins, which is why when these two teams are squaring up, Washington is only minus 115 on the on the money line. But that's good enough for me, Higgins, because they've got John Lester on the mound versus Brubaker. Brubaker's been pretty good for Pittsburgh this year. Lester hasn't been great for Washington, but he's been okay. He's eaten up some innings. But basically what I'm doing, Higgins, is I'm taking the best lineup here. And I'm just saying, give me Trey Turner, give me Juan Soto, give me Schwarber, give me Josh Bell in a little bit of a revenge game here against the Pirates. And I will take Washington minus 115 on the money line. If they keep giving me little advantages like this, like if they're saying Washington is no greater than minus 120 in the series, I will be on Washington all series. I am betting the better lineup gets enough runs home to win a game regardless of pitching.
I completely support this pick. If you hadn't already been on it, I probably would have found myself there for very similar reasoning. And Brett, there is one point that you did not bring up for this series that I would like to bring up. This is in Washington, and Pittsburgh on the road this season is 10-22. They are not good on the road. Washington, I mean, they're 15-17 at home, but 10-22 on the road. Fade the Pirates if they are going anywhere this year.
Yeah, I think really you just keep your eye on the lines during this series because if you can grab Washington minus 120 or less, I would just hop on. Anything can happen in an individual baseball game, Higgins. A bloop and a blast changes a lot of games, but it seems like good value getting Juan Soto and Trey Turner versus the Pirates at minus 115.
Well, I read off the home and away records in that Washington-Pittsburgh series. Now, I want you to ignore those records in this Cubs-Mets game on Monday, because if you look at the home record of the Mets, 17-6, you'd say, why am I betting against them when they're playing in Citi Field? Especially with the Cubs coming to town, who are 14-17. Well, let me tell you why you don't want to bet on the Mets on Monday. The Cubs at plus 140 on the money line are going to be the play that I am making, and that's because they have Jake Arrieta on the mound, who has not been fantastic this year, kind of like what Brett was saying with the pitchers in his matchup, but Arrieta still has the capabilities to be able to go out there and pitch 6 strong innings. Meanwhile, he's facing off against David Peterson, who is 1-5 on the season, and the last time that he faced off against the Cubs was back in April, and he only lasted 3 innings and gave up 6 runs in a 14-6 routing. Now, I don't know if necessarily the over is going to hit in this game of 8. I do like it considering how high the ERAs of these starting pitchers are, but I'm staying away from the over-under. Right now, I think the Cubs at plus 140 is some fantastic value, especially since David Peterson, he last registered a win in April. There have been a few times that the Mets have won and he just didn't earn the win, but majoritively when he pitches, the Mets lose.
Yeah, no, David Peterson is pretty much an auto fade, Higgins. You hit the nail on the head. The reason I would not bet the over 8 in this one, even though you mentioned the score the last time David Peterson was on the mound against the Cubs, is the Mets and Cubs have two of the best bullpens in Major League Baseball, Higgins.
Did
So
you
it's,
think you'd be saying that about the Mets?
yeah, kind of. I mean, in all honesty, yes, Seth Lugo is a fantastic pitcher. Trevor May is paid heavily. Familia is okay, but I like Familia. I think he has good stuff. So I
Yes.
mean, Miguel Castro's a good pitcher, good stuff. Sometimes he gets hit hard, but that's what happens when you throw hard, right? So yeah, I think the Cubs bullpen's been a huge shock. I think Patrick Wisdom playing so well for the Cubs has been a huge shock. Definitely for the Cardinals fans, they can't believe what Patrick Wisdom's doing in a Cubs uniform. But the over 8 would scare me just because this is the rare matchup where like the bullpens are actually better than the starters.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Brett, let's stick in the NL East though, because we talked about the Nationals. We just talked about the Mets. Let's talk about the Phillies. They're heading out West Coast to the Dodgers. It's a later game. This is going to be a 7 o'clock start time on the East Coast, 4 o'clock on the West Coast. So it's actually primetime baseball right here. And we have an interesting matchup between Howard and Gonsolin. Gonsolin, who has had a start already, but he's still coming off of the IL. And interestingly enough, Brett, I mean, when you have the Dodgers bats, it's hard to not look at the over already. And when you look at the Phillies on the mound with Spencer Howard, a man that's a 4.61 ERA, I think the Dodgers are going to be able to do that rather responsibly. So an over 9 at minus 105. I like the play, and I think we're going to take it.
Yeah, I think over 9 is definitely within reason. Now, Higgins, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Philadelphia Phillies are on a nice little 4-game winning streak here, and I'm not one to stop the train. So I'm hopping aboard the Phillies train
Ooh.
at plus 1.5 runs at minus 125. Max Muncy goes on the IL on Sunday for the Dodgers. He's a key cog. Now, that's not to say I'm worried about the Dodgers lineup. They just call someone up, he automatically hits. That's how the Dodgers roll. But to lose a guy that's been in your lineup almost every single day this season, that's going to hurt on day one. I get that little bit of day one's shock for the Dodgers. I get the hot team coming to town, a team that's maybe believing in itself a little more. Plus, they have some big bats too in the names of McCutcheon and Harper and Real Muto and Hoskins and Gene Segura. So I'm not backing a nobody team here against the Dodgers. I'm backing, some all stars who maybe need to play up a little bit to the back of their baseball card. But plus 1.5 runs, minus 125 juice. I think that's a good number for the 4-game winning streak, Philadelphia Phillies.
You know, the Dodgers are dealing with some injuries like Muncy, like you mentioned, though. But you mentioned the Phillies bats are just as big, and Gonsolin, his ERA to start the season is a 5.4. His whip's a 4.20. That's because he's literally only pitched 1 2/3 innings so far. So it's a very small data size that we have there. I should mention that. But Gonsolin has only pitched a very little bit so far. So with those limitations, while these batters have kind of already gotten into full swing, I like the over 9 in this scenario. I think it's going to be an interesting play. And I also kind of like your plus 1.5 there. I think both of those plays should be interesting. Brett, before we get out of here, before we get out of the baseball as well, though, we do have some plenty of other games. The Diamondbacks Giants, that's an NL West game that interests me a little bit. And the Rays White Sox. That's another great game on Monday, especially because we have Lance Lynn on the mound facing off against Glasgow.
Yes, Glasnow versus Lynn will be an excellent game. I'm actually disappointed my Mets are on ESPN because it would be nice to watch Rays White Sox on one channel and being in the local market, Higgins, I'd still get my New York Mets on the local channel. But yeah, I mean, I think that is the game of the night. You mentioned it. Both teams really good, leading their divisions right now and have their aces on the mound.
Both of those teams also fantastic against the run line this season. So if you look at that line, Tampa Bay, the 1.5 run underdog, is minus 220, and Chicago White Sox at minus 1.5, they're plus 180 because this game's probably not going to have a lot of runs, so a multi run win is going to be hard to come by, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And Higgins, one more I want to mention, but I really want to mention it because of the big change in the MVP odds here in New Jersey. The Toronto Blue Jays take on the Boston Red Sox tomorrow. Toronto's plus 115. Their MVP, I guess, co leader, whatever you want to call it, Vlad Guerrero Jr., plus 135. Shohei Ohtani, plus 135. Both have 20 home runs on the year. Ohtani pitches. His team's struggling. Vlad's team is on the rise. Higgins, do you have a lean in the MVP race in the AL?
Well, in Oregon, Otani's still the favorite. Outside of the podcast, I did end up placing an Otani bet a few months ago. I think it was about a month and a half ago. Guerrero is catching up on his heels, though, and that cash out option is kind of dwindling a little bit. I'm going to sit on Otani a little bit, probably into July. The NL MVP race, though, Brett, I don't know if you've looked at that in New Jersey, but in Oregon, DeGrom is the favorite now at plus 200. He jumped ahead of Tatis Jr. at plus 375 and Acuna at plus 400.
Higgins, the same thing is happening in New Jersey. Jacob DeGrom plus 200, Tatis plus 250, Ronald Acuna Jr. plus 400. And this is a guy I think we all need to circle, Higgins. You could bet it now if you want. But Jesse Winker is batting over 300, driving in runs like crazy for the Cincinnati Reds. He is plus 2,500, Higgins, and he is a name we could be talking about at the end of the season. And this might be your last chance to get good value on him because the secret's kind of out. Balls are flying out of Cincinnati. Everyone knows it's the small park, but man, are balls flying out this year.
Yeah, he's listed at 2,500 in Oregon as well, and he actually made the top 10 just last night for his glove, not just because of his bat. So he's doing a little bit of all of that out in Cincinnati. So it's interesting with the MLB being as long as it is. There's lots of opportunities for these futures. Typically, we don't condone locking up your money as long term as these futures in baseball typically make you, but as the season gets a little shorter, sometimes it's worth it. We talked about DeGrom at plus 200, though, in the NL. As long as he keeps helping himself out in terms of hitting in those runs, I think his batting is going to help out that NL MVP, though. But in the Cy Young, I don't think there's another person close to him at this point in the NL.
No, Corbin Burns gave him a run for his money in the beginning of the year. Corbin Burns ended up on the IL for a little bit, and DeGrom kind of is running away with it. DeGrom's having a historic season, Higgins, and I think if that happens, you have to give him the MVP as well. With how much Tatis has been in and out of the lineup as well this year, although he's played fantastic, not to take anything away from him.
Yes, absolutely. Tatis has played fantastic, but when you're talking about history like this, there you got to talk about a pitcher potentially winning the MVP. And there has been a pitcher that's won the MVP and the Cy Young before. It's actually happened 11 times. Most recently, Kershaw did that in 2014 and Verlander in 2011. So it has happened in the 2000s, but it takes quite the year from a pitcher to be able to win that award.
Definitely. Well, I'll take another Cy Young award in the Jacob DeGrom cabinet, so that's fine with me.